Welcome to Michael Potts Photography, the story behind the photograph. I am not Michael Potts. Here he is. I am his guest interviewer today.
Yes.
Not even interviewee, I'm a guest interviewer, which is very rare.
This is the 2023 end of season review. Now, there's lots of reviews you can see online where pundits and journalists share their opinions on which drivers did well and which drivers didn't. This review is not going to be that. I did think about doing it. At the start of the year, I put together my prediction of who would be first, second and third all the way to 20th. I managed to get two of them right, so I'm not really the best pundit for driver performance. But instead, I'm going to talk about the things that I found interesting as a photographer covering most of the races this year.
How many races did you do this year?
So this year we had 22 races. We were supposed to have 24, but China was cancelled due to COVID. And we unfortunately couldn't go to Imola because there was a huge flood and the whole track was underwater as well as the town. So it wasn't safe to go racing there. But I managed to do 21 of the others. I missed Australia, which was a bit sad because that was quite an exciting race. And been to all the others.
And next year, you're going to do every single race?
Every single race. So next year we'll have 24. China's back on the calendar, and so is Imola.
And so we'll see even less of you here than we did this year.
Yes, but hopefully you'll see me abroad in interesting places.
As we did in Dubai this year.
Yes. So after the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, we went and hung out in Dubai.
It was superb. I was already planning to be there. I don't plan my holidays around Grand Prix race weekends because I don't know when they are. So of all of the many races that you went to all over the world, which was your favourite?
That's a difficult one. There are quite a few that sort of jump out. Monaco is always fantastic. This year the race was very wet. The last few laps were virtually underwater. We almost had a different winner. Fernando Alonso could have won that race, but Monaco is always delightful. I went to Japan for the first time. That is a fantastic track. It's in the middle of nowhere, but the fans are incredible, and it's a really, really good venue to go to. But I think my favorite is Las Vegas.
The new one?
The new one. Las Vegas was at the end of the season. It was in the middle of a huge section of flyaway races, so I hadn't been home for a very long time. Going into the race weekend, there were a lot of issues. Formula One had basically trashed Las Vegas. They dug up everything. They had annoyed all of the locals. Very few people who lived there were looking forward to the race. The first night, the first day of racing, within 9 minutes, everything had to be called off because one of the cars sucked up a manhole cover, destroying it, but it made it unsafe to continue. So the organisers had to go around to every single one of the 100+ manhole covers and make sure they were properly sealed in. Yeah. Unfortunately, it meant that people who paid to come to watch Formula One on the Thursday couldn't see any racing. They eventually did go racing at 2 a.m, but at that stage, all the hospitality staff had to leave because of the union requirements. So they couldn't have any fans there without any support. And that meant that so many people were left disappointed.
So terrible start.
Terrible start. Worst possible start. I mean, we were walking around to each other going, we're all screwed. This is the end of Formula One because they put so much effort into it. And there were so many doubters and naysayers that apparently had been proved right on the first day. But somehow Formula One managed to pull it out of the bag, and it produced one of the most exciting races of the year. We had different leaders, 3 different drivers could have won the race. I spent a lot of time in the fan areas talking to people. Everyone who was there thought it was brilliant. It's an amazing venue to be in. Las Vegas is a very cool city.
But also, from my point of view, because I see these things through the lens of being your friend, as opposed to through the lens of being into Formula One, it seemed to me it was one of the only places you went to where you actually took time to leave the city and visit around.
Yes, we had a week off between Brazil and Las Vegas. So I hired a car and went driving around for a week in Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. And it's stunning.
The photos you were sending on my WhatsApp, it's just, oh my goodness, a bit otherworldly in beauty.
It's if you haven't had a chance to visit that part of the world, I thoroughly recommend it. It's exceptionally beautiful. Talking about Monument Valley, which I'm sure all of you have seen in some movie at some point, whether it was Forrest Gump, Back to the Future, or any Western you've ever seen. But I've also been very lucky and visited some Mayan ruins in Mexico. I've been to Chiang Mai in Thailand. There's lots of little places that you can sort of go into for a couple of days between races. And that's really important to help recuperate.
I actually think that's something that people will be quite interested in because they see Formula One photographer. It just seems so glamorous. You just travel the world, taking nice photos, going to lovely events, seeing glamorous people, and that's your job. But I don't think people realise how hard it is as a job. It would be really interesting to hear, what is it like behind the scenes? What are your hours, for example? What does an average day look like for you?
Yes. If you've been watching other Formula One photographers on the internet, such as Kim Illman, who's a very good friend of mine, you would think that we all fly around first class and stay in the best hotels. For the rest of the photographers, it's not exactly like that. For example, Kim and I went out for dinner in Montreal. We went to a stunning restaurant. It was absolutely gorgeous. I then had to get a bus back across the river to the other side of the town to stay in my motel. It wasn't a very glamorous motel. It was more of a trucker's motel. So that's the kind of contrast that you have. One day you're photographing Brad Pitt, the next day you are queuing for muffins in a roadside, not overly glamorous hotel.
And that's because your costs are sky high for this
Yes.
job, because you have to fly yourself to every single race all over the world. You have to find accommodation in each of those places, and you have to get car hire. So imagine you're basically living your entire year in hotels with a rented car and having to fly to commute. So it's insane costs.
Yes.
And you have to recoup all of that.
Yes. So I work as a freelancer, which means that I pay to go to the races, and then I hope to sell photographs from that to cover the costs.
So when you do get there to film the weekend, what are your hours?
The race weekend starts on Thursday. So it starts pretty early on a Thursday morning, usually around about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. You get the drivers arriving. It's always great to see someone like Lewis Hamilton arriving because his fashion is outstanding. We might talk a bit more about that later. But it's a really good chance to see each driver, catch up a bit of the gossip that happened at the last weekend. There's always some news story that's been leaked. So Thursday is a very, very important day. The Friday is my busiest day. Before the practice session, the teams all present their cars. So this is a chance for them to show what new bits they've added to the cars. And then we have the first practice. So this is the first time we see cars on track that race weekend. I usually tend to do that first session at least partly in the pits. A lot of the drivers have new helmet designs for a race weekend, so they're allowed to change the way the helmet looks. And it's a good opportunity to get photographs of that, to get pictures close up of any changes to the cars. So then, after that session, we have a 2-hour break. And that's an opportunity for me to edit up as much as I possibly can, get it sent off, ready for the next session. And the next section, I sort of spend out on track as far away from the media centre as possible. So I try and pick the hardest to get to part of track. Because this is a session where you've got a little bit more time getting to and getting from. And it's a shot that you're not going to get a chance to get for the rest of the weekend because you'll have so many commitments.
But you found yourself in some pretty dangerous places because of that.
I mean, photographing Formula One is a little bit dicey. We do sign a document at the start of the year saying motorsport is dangerous, but the FIA does a fairly good job of trying to keep us safe. They restrict certain corners, so we're not allowed to go and stand in the exceptionally dangerous spaces.
But you've sent me photos from those weekends of bits of car flying through the air towards you.
That has happened. This year was not a big crashing year. Last year we had some spectacular crashes. There was the huge incident with Zhou Guanyu at Silverstone. That was probably the one you're talking about, where cars were flying towards us. Surprisingly, they didn't allow us to stand in the same place again this year, so that was a bit disappointing.
Oh, strange. Really strange. So delighted you were there last year. I was getting so exhausted just hearing about your race weekend that I thought we needed to stop for a little refreshment. Now that I have a latte, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, you've just done session number 2.
Session number 2. Friday is bad. So Friday I'll probably finish about 2 or 3 in the morning, depending on where the race is, and then start again at 8 o'clock.
Oh, it's horrendous just thinking about it.
Saturday's a little bit easier. We have 2 sessions. One is a practice session, and then 2 or 3 hours later, depending on the race, we have qualifying. And qualifying is very, very exciting. Well, it's the first time the cars are actually competing against each other. So it's the first time we're seeing who's fastest. Sunday is race day. So this is the main focus of the weekend. This is what everyone's come for. This is the day that you're going to see your celebrities. This is going to be where all the action happens.
And you've had to learn to spot celebrities because you could not recognise a celebrity when you went into this.
No.
We have to remember the time that you sent in photos of Ed Sheeran and it turned out they were Ron Weasley.
Yes. This year, I did photograph the real Ed Sheeran. But
Finally, you got him.
This year, we've had quite a remarkable experience. They were filming a new movie starring Brad Pitt about Formula One.
Is that why you've been sending me so many photos of Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand. I thought you were stalking Brad Pitt around Formula One. I was like, he goes to a lot of Formula One races.
It's been brilliant because the whole paddock becomes a film set. So they've been filming cars on track. They've been filming us walking up and down the paddock, photographing Brad and as he pretends to be a racing driver. But it's also a bit weird for them because I doubt they've ever been on a film set where half the extras are professional journalists who are trying to photograph everything they do wrong. So it's been an interesting experience for everyone.
I have to say, he looked the part, Brad Pitt, when you sent me that photo. And there you were in the background, not looking at him, I notice.
Yes,
wandering past.
So this was at Silverstone. And I was off to go photograph a driver, and then I saw Brad. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I sprinted down the side of the track, trying to get a shot, and I got to a really good position. As I sat down to take a picture, one of his security guards grabbed me and pulled me away because he was about to walk directly down there and I was in the shot. But yeah, so do keep an eye out for, I don't know what it's going to be called. I think it might be Apex or, I'm not too sure. They haven't sort of finalised the name yet.
I've just got a working title at the moment.
Yeah, but it should be quite a good one.
So it's strange, they're actually making a movie with all the famous drivers as part of it.
Yes.
And Brad, how do they explain the age difference?
He is an old driver who's come out of retirement to help a young buck succeed.
Oh, it's going to be great.
And his career never went the way he wanted it to because he was injured when he was young. And, yeah, it's Jerry Bruckheimer is the director. He's often at races. He's quite good fun to photograph.
So do you find your relationship with the people you take photos of to be a good one, or are you more of a nuisance? How do people view it?
I think we have a fairly good rapport with them.
Well, you have a sort of respectful relationship with them. You see each other every race.
Yeah.
You're officially accredited.
In a way, it's beneficial for them to be photographed by us because we have quite a good reach on where our photographs end up. So it helps them with publicity. If they give us a smile, it's going to be a better photograph.
There's a symbiotic relationship, which I think is fascinating across all walks of life, really, where there are stars. So stars of cinema or sporting stars, and the photographers, because it's their job to take photos of them, but it's the star's job also to be photographed. So the two have to work together and have a balance, but a respectful balance where you're not crossing a line and interfering with their work as well.
Yeah. If you're a famous footballer like Pogba or Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and you arrive at the paddock, you'll be swarmed by lots of people wanting your autograph. And it's very difficult for a photographer to kind of get in amongst that to get a good shot. However, we do get an opportunity later in the day when the stars come out onto the grid. And this is a real good opportunity because there's fewer photographers, there's less fans, and there's more space. So everyone's a lot calmer, everyone's got a little bit more time to be photographed. And I've managed to get some cracking shots of some really interesting people.
Yeah, so you build up these relationships with people that you wouldn't usually meet.
No.
Back to the race weekend. It's Sunday afternoon. You've just taken photos of the celebrities coming to see. Some of them are friends with the drivers, aren't they?
Yes.
So,
I got a good photograph of Will Smith in Saudi Arabia who'd visited Lewis Hamilton by surprise. He had snuck onto the grid. Lewis had no idea he was there. And then as Lewis is about to climb into the car, the two of them see each other, and it's this very cool moment. Lewis actually just walked straight past him, and Will's like, Lewis, and he turns around and, oh, it's you. And so that was cool.
So once all of the celebrity spotting and photography is finished, what happens next?
So then it's the start of the race, and this is always very, very exciting. Your adrenaline's going, no one knows what's going to happen. You rush off to the first corner or the second corner, wherever you think the action is going to be. You set up, you cross your fingers and hope for a crash. Preferably one that no one gets injured in, but a spectacular crash nonetheless.
No.
I got a few this year. I got one of Lewis Hamilton crashing in Qatar. He tangled with his teammate George Russell and ended up beached. Then about 2 races later, Sergio Perez did exactly the same thing and also crashed at the first corner. His was more spectacular. He got into the air a lot longer. It's always very exciting. You can imagine there's 20 cars hurtling towards a corner as fast as they can go, and they all have to stop very quickly and find a place to get around. And there's one racing line that is the most optimum, and they all want to be right there on the same piece of tarmac. So it's usually chaotic, and there's often carnage.
And is that what all the photographers are hoping for?
Yes.
Because when there's debris flying in the air, there's photos getting sold.
Yeah.
But thank God in Formula One, the cars are getting safer and safer all the time. It's extraordinary what people are able to walk away from.
The crash that happened in Silverstone, where their car flipped up, landed upside down, the guy was walking around the paddock before the race finished.
So you've got to the corner, you're hoping for a crash in which no one gets hurt, and what happens next?
You'll try and find 3 or 4 spots, 3 or 4 different corners, to try and get different points of action, maybe some overtakes, maybe some cars that look like they're on the edge of the limit. And you're trying to find photographs that sort of sum up the race weekend. So this might be a photograph that a newspaper will publish as their lead photograph. Yeah, these 2 cars overtook each other at this corner and this guy went on to. And that's quite, I spend quite a lot of time planning where I'm going to be for that, because it's different for each track. Some tracks like Azerbaijan, the first corner is very exciting, but there isn't very much action anywhere else around the first few corners, maybe turn 5 or 6, but it takes a long time to get there. So you have to decide, am I going to photograph something atmospheric, or am I going to try and get action? So you do that for most of the race, and then right at the end, maybe the last 5 laps, you head back to the paddock and you wait for the end. And then they let you into the paddock to go and photograph the podium, so the guy getting out of the car and celebrating. So once the driver gets out of his car, punches the air, celebrates, runs over to his girlfriend, gives her a big kiss, slaps his teammates on the back, they have the champagne. Champagne's always good fun. Spray it everywhere, get some really good shots of drivers and champagne, and it's kind of the release at the end of the race weekend. The final act that we photograph is the team celebration. So the winning team usually gets the whole team gets together, and there's a big sort of celebration, often with champagne. Red Bull get cans of Red Bull and they spray it all over each other, which makes brilliant photographs, and it's utterly hilarious. But it's awful for photographers, because a lot of the mechanics run at us and spray us with the Red Bull, and you get your camera covered in this sticky, gooey, nasty, and everything you have smells of Red Bull for about 3 days afterwards, because you just can't get it out of the lenses or the inner workings, and it's frustrating. That's a normal race weekend. What they've started doing now is they have sprint weekends. So we have 6 sprint races, and the timetable is completely different. So on Friday we have qualifying, Saturday we have a whole separate qualifying and a whole separate race, and then on Sunday there's another race. So sprint weekends are what you normally do in a race weekend, but like times 1.5. They are incredibly hard work.
So you don't sleep at all?
No. Sprint weekends are very, very difficult. We've got 6 of them coming up next year, and one of them is the second to last race. And that is going to be very, very hard.
So what's your relationship like with the other photographers? Because you're effectively both colleagues and competitors.
Yes. There's fierce competition between all of us on a professional level. We all try and post our best shots to Instagram.
I think it must be so nice to see familiar faces when you live so far from home, almost all the year.
Yeah, no, it is. We do have a very good group of people, and it's a privilege to work with them.
Well, now we've seen the reality behind the glamorous life of a professional Formula One photographer. What were your impressions of the year? So aside from that, what did you think of it as a race year?
On the surface, it was a fairly dull year, because Max Verstappen won just about everything. He won 19 of the 22 races. His teammate won 2 at the start of the year, and Carlos Sainz won in Singapore, which was a brilliant race. But he dominated. He dominated in a way that no other driver has ever dominated ever before. And hopefully, it's in a way that no other driver ever will in the future. He's a remarkable talent. He's an exceptional driver, and he is driving in the fastest car. And he's got a whole team that is focused on him and him alone. That was something quite special. It wasn't necessarily as exciting as it was, say, in 2021 when Lewis and Max were fighting each other. So hopefully next year we see a few more teams, maybe Ferrari with Charles Leclerc, or Mercedes with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso at Aston Martin, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at McLaren, all of these drivers stepping up and really taking the fight to Max. And hopefully we'll have a more interesting year.
So here's to a good Formula One year in 2024.
Thank you and goodbye.